The Holy Gospel according to John. Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Pilate answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priest have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish authorities. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." "What is truth?" Pilate responded. "The gospel of the Lord." What is truth? I find those words, that response, incredibly meaningful and timely. Today is Christ the King Sunday, one of my least favorite Sundays sometimes, but still good. I mean, we could just ignore it and have Thanksgiving Sunday, which would be nice, but following the lectionary lessons that are suggested for the church and that millions of other worshipers will hear this day forces us to ask hard questions. Hard questions such as, what is truth? Pilate asked him the question we answer with a yes this day in song and liturgy and prayer and praise. Are you a king? We say, yes, you are. Jesus says here, you say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. It is Jesus, or the gospel writer John, who introduces this whole truth question. What is truth? We are assailed, are we not, in such a way today that we almost constantly have to ask that question, what is truth? Is it AI generated? Are we simply being told a lie by a politician or a leader or a business person of some sort? Advertising is often, if not always, not true. If nothing else, it plays loose and fancy with the truth, exaggerating, expanding, and pushing half-truths in pursuit of sales. And please, let's not even begin dealing with all we see online, what we hear on the news and which news. I mean, we even have those fact-check places we go to, but even those sometimes we wonder, can we trust them? Is the truth that we are to find our value is the truth? That we are to find our value in outside opinions and things? That we can only believe what we are liked or loved if we have enough likes or love online? Is it the truth that we have to measure our lives according to the standards of society, by things and possessions and such? Is the truth that in the world we must resort to violent means, retribution, righteous anger, and violence even of words? What is sad is when we have to ask this in our closest relationships, in our communities. What is truth? Are your words trustworthy and true? We often fool ourselves. We think we are swimming in the truth, that we really mean it, that we really love someone, that we're really, truly committed to something, but in truth, there might be other things motivating us. This is not new. It has in some way been going on for all of history. Earlier in the Gospel of John, Jesus spoke about truth and the corruption of it, saying, You are from your father, the devil, and you choose to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks according to his own nature, for he is a liar and the father of lies. But because I tell you the truth, you do not believe me. End quote. I tell the truth, you do not believe me. The lies that we embrace, where do they come from? They come from the evil parts of our world and of our lives and our hearts. The selfish and greedy parts of our lives and hearts. The vengeful and resentful parts of our lives that lead us and lead others to wander from the truth, to tell lies and even live in the lies. Lies like violence is the answer. Revenge must be taken. I cannot forgive. I cannot love. Lies that tell us we must answer first and foremost to the kings and queens and those who would rule in our lives in this world, in this earthly kingdom, rather than listen to the one who speaks truth to power. The one who is the final ruler of the cosmos and our lives, the one before whom we will stand as surely as Christ stands before Pilate, and who calls us to listen to the truth of his voice, the truth of grace, the truth of mercy, the truth of the one God and ruler who embraces all. In the meantime, we must struggle, work, hope to witness to his truth in whatever ways we can. The truth that says all children are God's children, the truth that says sacrificial love is stronger than violence. And there have been those in our world who have worked to do just that. Think of them, the Gandhis or Martin Luther King or others. And there's a movie that's out now about our own Lutheran hero Bonhoeffer, and I'm going to talk about that. I hope it's worth seeing, but there's something funny about it that maybe even he wouldn't like. I at least wondered this as I looked at the trailers and thought about it. And then after I talked to someone who saw it, I went and read some reviews, one of which was especially helpful, and that I'm going to quote from Christianity Today. So while I'm talking this about Bonhoeffer as an example of one who embraced the truth, I'm also going to be making another point regarding the movie. Bonhoeffer was, of course, the Lutheran pastor who grew up in a privileged family and gave up many opportunities to become a pastor. He was well known and taught, and then Hitler rose to power. Bonhoeffer spoke out. The Protestant church, the Lutheran church, had become corrupted by nationalism and Aryanism. The people of Germany embraced this new king, this dictator, Hitler, because they saw him as the answer, and because he convinced them with lies to blame others and hate others. One pastor literally said, quote, "Christ has come to us through Adolf Hitler." Christ, Hitler. Bonhoeffer spoke the truth to power. He was a pacifist, and history is not clear about what roles he had in plots against Hitler that used violence. There was one truth for Bonhoeffer, and would cost him his life. He continued to speak out, work to free Jewish people and get them to safety, and work with the German underground and British intelligence. And again, history is unclear, but possibly even being involved in assassination plots or planning against Hitler. What's tragic is before all this, or in the midst of it, he fled to New York, but he only stayed there for 26 days before returning on the last passenger ship to steam back to Germany. And it was there that he was arrested with his brother-in-law and his brother. And while in prison, and while being moved from prison to prison, he wrote meaningful devotional books and books about Christian community and the cost of discipleship. He wrote that we must not be taken in by cheap grace, and that true discipleship could be and should be costly. After 2 years in prison, as the war was ending, as Hitler knew it was over, he ordered that all conspirators against him were to be executed. And Bonhoeffer and his brother were hung just days, about 2 weeks before the war ended. But here's my problem. And the review says this well. The review says this, quote, "This is the trap into which the film Bonhoeffer, Pastor Spy, Assassin falls. In the latest offering from Angel Studios, the story of Dietrich Bonhoeffer is an empty container into which our own desires, in this case, desires for a faith that serves political ends, are poured," end quote. I would say that it serves not just political ends, but it falls into the all too human need and desire for violence and vengeance. Again, from the review, quote, "Toward the end of his life, he gives a sermon in which his famous 'When Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die,' quote, is interspersed with footage of a conspirator planting a bomb." At the heart of Bonhoeffer is the confident depiction of the theologian as a would-be assassin. We know that Bonhoeffer was initially arrested not for an assassination plot, as the film depicts, but for his involvement in a scheme to smuggle Jews into neighboring Switzerland. Bonhoeffer's real-life words complicate this narrative. Quoting Bonhoeffer, the review says, quote, to confess and testify to the truth as it is in Jesus, and at the same time to love the enemies of that truth, his enemies and ours, and to love them with the infinite love of Jesus Christ is indeed the narrow way, end quote, he wrote in Discipleship. And years later, waiting his execution, he doubled down saying, quote, today I can see the dangers of that book, Discipleship, though I still stand by what I wrote, end quote. The review goes on saying, perhaps it's suggesting in the movie that the audience should also lay down their political naivete and take up arms. Perhaps it's suggesting that the way of Jesus is too soft for the hard realities of modern conflict and should be replaced by a more realistic approach. Ironically, this is the very approach the Nazis themselves take, replacing crosses with swastikas and Bibles with copies of Mein Kampf, turning to a stronger version of church when the old ways governed by Scripture, sacrament, no longer fit the bill, end quote. My problem is that the movie looks like a good spy thriller, and that it had to be made that way so that people are attracted to it because of the fight, the violent fight, the bombs against Hitler. Yes, it was a noble fight. It was a fight that needed to be waged, and we could all wish that some of those plots against Hitler had succeeded, that maybe millions would have been saved. But my problem is that we still, even in a movie about someone witnessing to the truth of God's grace, that we are attracted to it because it has an element of violence. It has the ways of the kingdom of this world that we also often desire. In a world with too much violence, with too much political violence, with social violence, with attempts on the life of a candidate, to mobs at the Capitol, to violence upon weak and vulnerable and more. Well, as the movie review concludes, quote, we do not need an argument for theologically motivated government overthrow. We do not need further justification for political violence. What we needed was a film about a man concerned with how God might be calling the church to be steadfast amid the great temptation to mold our faith to our politics, end quote. We cannot mold Christ the King to other kings and queens or anything that would rule our lives. We are called to worship and to follow a different kind of ruler in our lives, a different kind of king, queen. The truth stands before us not to judge us like Pilate judged Christ, but to forgive us, as Christ did from the cross. The truth is that Christ is the final word of truth in our lives. The truth is that we are called to live in that truth, even when it is hard, even when we stand condemned for it. Ironically, on the day I sat down to work on the sermon, I came across a good quote about truth by the novelist Nadine Gordimer. I do not know her, but Nadine Gordimer, who grew up and lived in South Africa and gave up her privileged position to speak out and write against apartheid, even winning a Nobel Prize for her writing. She said, quote, truth isn't always beauty, but the hunger for it is, end quote. May we always hunger for God's truth. May we be fed with God's truth. May we be filled with God's truth.